Hey guys, today we're covering all the secrets of Canadian whiskey.
We're going to talk about all the unique rules, the role of rye, how U.S. Prohibition affected Canadian whiskey, and some of the craft distilleries out there doing great things. So Canadian whiskey is, I think, tragically underlooked when it comes to international whiskeys. Most people think about Scotch, Irish whiskey, American whiskey, and Canadian whiskey tends to fly under the radar. But we hope to change that today, and we're going to talk about some of the unique things that make Canadian whiskey, Canadian whiskey.
And here's the thing that's really interesting about Canadian whiskey, is that there's not a lot of rules into making Canadian whiskey. In fact, Canadian whiskey is the type of whiskey that has the least amount of restrictions out there. Less so than bourbon or Scotch or Irish whiskey or Japanese whiskey. Canadian whiskey has the least restrictions.
Yeah.
So that could be a good thing and that could be a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
The bad thing obviously is that the quality could possibly suffer.
Right.
You might have some really bad whiskey out there that's just, labeled as a whiskey, but they follow the bare minimum to make a good quality whiskey. But the good side of having less restrictions is that you get to experiment a lot more and get to make some really, really unique and different whiskeys that go against the grain, no pun intended, of Scotch or bourbon or anything else that's out there right now.
It definitely makes them stand out with the flexibility they're allowed to try different things. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
One of the rules that they have in Canadian whiskey is that you have 9.09% of any other liquor you want to put in there, any sort of flavoring that you want to put into the whiskey, and it's still considered a whiskey.
They can't just throw anything in there. Whatever spirit they throw in there has to be aged for at least 2 years. So that narrows it down a little bit.
That's good, because I was a little concerned that we could put a bar of soap in there.
Yeah.
And here we are ingesting that thing.
It needs to be clean.
Hey, get my insides.
So I think one of the crazier combinations I've ever seen, there was one called Wiser's 52, right? So 96% of that Canadian whiskey was made up of a 16-year-old Canadian whiskey.
Wow.
And the other 4% was made up of a 52-year-old Scotch.
What?
And that was the combination.
How expensive was that?
I have no idea.
Look at that.
Yeah.
If you guys know, let us know in the comments below.
Yeah.
I've never seen that before.
Yeah, it's called Wiser's 52. It's a 52-year-old peated Scotch that they added to a 16-year-old Canadian whiskey.
There's another distillery called Bareface that has a whiskey called 111. And that whiskey has 1/11 of the liquid in that whiskey is mezcal. Which that seems really interesting because that you don't normally see that. You couldn't do that in the United States.
Yeah.
And it'd still be considered a whiskey.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah. So it's still considered a whiskey in Canada. And it's promoted as such, but it has 1/11 of the liquid is mezcal.
Yeah. I'd love to taste that one sometime.
I would love to too. But we do have a Bareface.
We do. And we will try that one later.
Oh, okay.
Another interesting fact about Canadian whiskey is that there's this misconception that all Canadian whiskey is rye whiskey, when in fact, it's not the case. They actually use multiple grains. Dating back to the 1800s, distillers used to use wheat in the Canadian whiskey, but they started to use rye based on its availability, and rye gave it this spicy note to it that people really enjoyed. And from that point on, consumers just assumed that all Canadian whiskeys were rye.
And that's akin to what happened here in the United States, where you had a lot of settlers coming to the United States. Some people migrated to Kentucky, and they saw an overabundance of corn, and that's how corn became the quintessential grain to be used in bourbon.
Yeah.
Now, in Canada, rye grew a lot more. So because of that, they started using that more, and they started learning how to master the use of rye in whiskey.
We're going to try lot number 40, which is 100% rye.
Fill me up, sucker. How do you guys like my shirt? Is it too small? Please let me know in the comments below.
I'll comment now, yes.
I think I washed the shirt one too many times. Or I got fat. Oh man, I am getting a lot of spice on this.
Oh yeah.
I'm getting a lot of oak and leather as well.
Yeah?
Like a lot of it.
Yeah, this one was actually aged in oak casks.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
Like,
Like new oak casks.
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So maybe that's why I'm getting that small. Because
Probably, yeah.
It probably has a high char, I would guess. Because it's very also like I'm getting a lot of caramel and a lot of vanilla on this.
That's interesting for a rye.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Lot 40, they're a newer distillery in Canada, but they are doing a lot of good things up and coming. This one's rated pretty highly. Very quick finish here.
Yes.
Very quick finish. Not a big punch in the face like a rye whiskey, like not very sharp. I'm getting more of like, it's very smooth.
It's very smooth, but I am getting that rye. I'm getting that quintessential flavors that you normally get from a rye.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting that spice, cinnamon, black pepper, kind of combined.
Yep. I'm getting a little bit of licorice in there.
Yeah, I could see that. In the finish, I could definitely get a little bit more of the licorice. That oak is very prevalent still.
Yep.
So I don't know if they double oaked this one or what they did with the barrel itself, but this is it's very oak forward.
Yeah. Yeah, it comes in at 86 proof, so it's lower on the proof side, which is fairly typical for Canadian whiskeys. A lot of them tend to be blended, so that's why I think it's a little bit smoother going down, because you're not getting that punch like from the heat that you'd normally get from a higher proof whiskey or bourbon.
Right.
So yeah, Lot 40. That's an example of a Canadian rye. The MSRP for this one's about $30, so it's very affordable, and it's pretty prevalent here in the U.S. if you want to pick one up.
Interestingly, Canadian whiskey generally uses single grain distillation, which is when you distill and age the grains separately and then blend them together.
One other aspect that Canadian whiskeys are known for is a lot of them are blended. Blending can be done for a variety of reasons. One is for consistency, so that from batch to batch you get the same flavors. Another reason could be for the complexity and the balance, and also it's a way to experiment with mixing old and young whiskeys together. So there's a variety of reasons for blending, and we are gonna sample one right here called Bareface.
We talked about Bareface before.
We sure did.
And now we're going to try one of their whiskeys.
Yeah, it's called Bareface Elementally Aged. So this was aged in 3 different types of barrels. It was aged for 7 years in ex-bourbon barrels. Okay, because this is 100% corn, by the way.
Wow. Okay,
Yes.
so there you go.
100% corn.
So, okay.
Yeah, so it was aged for 7 years in ex-bourbon barrels. Then it was moved to French oak barrels, which had previously been used for some kind of wine. Okay. There are various types of wine. And then they were transferred from there to virgin Hungarian oak.
Wow.
Yes. But the last 2 are elementally aged, meaning they put them in like repurposed shipping containers and expose them to the elements in Canada.
That sounds interesting, and it goes back to the stuff that we've been talking about the ability to make really good whiskey by having free reign to try a bunch of different things.
Right.
We've never seen anything like this before, and I'm very curious to see how it tastes.
Yeah, and if you saw our American single malt video, you saw that we tried Bear Fight. This one is Bear Face, and again, I love the bottle. It's got the bear scratches in there. So I want to see these 2 go head to head, Bear Fight and Bear Face.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, as you can tell, we are big fans of bear parts. As you can tell, we love bears, and we want to drink every single part. Okay, as you can tell, we love bears, and we want to drink every whiskey with the name bear on it.
Ever.
Ever. Man, I say things, and then I realize what I said after I said
Can't take you anywhere. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of oak up front here.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I don't know if the previous one influenced this one in any shape or form, but I'm getting a lot of oak on this as well.
Yeah. That's funny. That I'm not getting a whole lot else than the oak.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of that same oak and leathery type of smell. I'm not getting a lot more than that. For corn, you would think you get a lot more vanilla and caramel.
Yeah, I was expecting sweeter notes in here, but not picking it up.
Yeah, I mean, you get a hint of it, but it's not very prevalent. For it being 100% corn,
right.
I definitely expected more.
Yeah. Oh, that's delicious.
This is so good.
Wow.
This is so good.
I'm definitely getting a lot more of the sweetness in the taste than I was on the smell.
100%. I'm getting a lot more of that sherry.
That was very good.
Very good. And it's very complex. This kind of reminds me of the Amroot Fusion in that it transforms in your mouth. It gets very sweet early, and then you start getting that bittersweet chocolate. It doesn't have any malt. But to me, I'm getting some malted flavors in there, and I don't know why. I don't know, I don't know what it is that's doing that to me, but I'm getting that, especially in the finish.
Yeah,
getting some of those salty, bittersweet chocolate notes.
Yeah, based on the smell, I was not expecting much on the taste, but I liked it.
Yeah, this is really nice.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, 100% corn is not typical for Canadian whiskeys, and it's really not typical in many places.
Right, even bourbon, because bourbon you have 51% corn, but other than that, you could just use rye and malted barley, and you don't see a lot of bourbons that have 100% corn.
Right,
you'll see it, but it's not that common. So this is really interesting, and the fact that it has 100% corn, I'm not getting some of those typical corn flavors. So I wonder what they did to the barrel. I'm not entirely sure, but I mean it's really nice. It's very complex.
So I'm a big history buff, so I love talking about anything history related, especially when it comes to whiskey.
Right.
And we've talked about Prohibition and how it affected American whiskey, but it also affected Canadian whiskey, but in a more positive way.
Very positive way. Yeah, because you have the border right there. It's a few steps from Canada to like Detroit, for example.
Right.
So you could just import a bunch of Canadian whiskey. And that's how we were getting a lot of our whiskeys here in the United States. Doing Prohibition, we were getting it from Canada.
Right. Prohibition was actually a turning point for several major Canadian distilleries that we know today. For example, Canadian Club and Seagram's. That was a big turning point for them because their product was readily available to American consumers during Prohibition.
Yeah, so they started importing a lot of that whiskey over here because obviously people wanted their whiskey in the United States and they couldn't get it from the American distillers. So they started crossing the border and getting it and bringing it here.
And really it turned Canadian whiskey from a regional product into an internationally recognized form of whiskey. All the profits they made allowed Canadian distilleries to innovate and expand their operations and really expanded Canadian whiskey into something much bigger and greater. And so we're seeing the effects of that today.
So let's talk a little bit about the craft distilleries that are in Canada right now. Eau Claire Distillery, please let me know if I'm saying it correctly. Eau Claire, we're all clear for Eau Claire. Eau Claire Distillery is the first distillery in Alberta, Canada to feature single malt whiskey. And it's won a bunch of awards. Highly recommend checking it out because it seems like they are up and coming and they're doing some really cool stuff.
Another distillery to look out for is Shelter Point on Vancouver Island. They actually grow their own barley there and they make a variety of single malt whiskeys. And some of them are finished in different casks, but they make a whole lineup of single malts and definitely worth trying out.
Look at that. So now you're seeing more single malts then in Canada.
Yep.
So that's pretty cool.
Even Crown Royal makes a single malt now.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I haven't been following Crown Royal a whole lot. I'm not
Yeah.
a huge fan of Crown Royal whiskey, so
No.
I haven't really been on the lookout. But maybe they're doing some cool stuff too.
They are. And we actually did a separate video on the Crown Royal Blackberry
Yes.
and some of the cocktails you can make for that, so check that out too.
Yes, please do. It's a really good video. Ryan's a good bartender.
Let us know what you think of Canadian whiskey, because for us it tends to go pretty overlooked. So we wanted to give you the ins and outs of Canadian whiskey, what to look for, and what makes it unique compared to all the other types of whiskey in the world.
Please like, share, and subscribe. And let your friends know, especially if they're Canadian. We want to be friends with Canada as well. Until next time,
Cheers.
Cheers.